You will not see betrayal coming, not because it hides well, but because you are trained to ignore it. The mind does not want to see danger in someone it loves, so it edits the evidence. It softens the signs. It calls suspicion overthinking and calls silence peace. This is the first illusion. You think betrayal begins with an act, a lie, a secret, a broken promise. But betrayal does not begin there. It begins earlier, quietly, in small shifts of behavior your ego refuses to name. Schopenhauer understood something most people spend their whole lives avoiding, that human beings are driven, beneath politeness and affection, by self-interest, not evil, not cruelty, something colder. Will. The will to preserve comfort, to preserve advantage, to preserve self, even at your expense. People do not usually betray you out of hatred. They betray you out of convenience. That distinction matters, because it means the signs are never dramatic. They are administrative, quiet reallocations of loyalty, attention, and effort, happening long before the moment you call betrayal. The first sign is subtle inconsistency. Someone becomes vague where they used to be specific. A whereabouts question gets a shorter answer. A shared plan gets rescheduled without much explanation. It feels like nothing. It is not nothing. It is the mind protecting itself, quietly rehearsing distance before distance becomes official. The second sign is decreasing curiosity. Betrayal often starts as withdrawal of interest, not addition of malice. They stop asking how your day was. They stop noticing your mood. It looks like distraction. It is disengagement. And disengagement is the emotional exit long before the physical one. Here's where most people get it wrong. They mistake decreased affection for a phase, a rough patch, stress. And sometimes it is. But Schopenhauer would tell you to look past the surface story people tell themselves, into the underlying drive shaping behavior. People do not usually abandon what still serves them. When effort quietly decreases, ask what changed in what they're getting from you, not what changed in their mood. This is not paranoia. Paranoia sees threat everywhere. This is observation. It sees pattern where pattern exists, and nothing where it does not. The wounded mind confuses the two. The disciplined mind does not. The third sign is subtle competitive energy disguised as humor. A joke that undercuts you in front of others. A compliment to someone else that seems to require your comparison. It feels like banter. It is often positioning. Schopenhauer saw human interaction as a quiet contest of wills, even among people who claim closeness. Not everyone competing with you announces it. Some do it through laughter. It looks like playfulness. It is often quiet resentment testing how much room it has to grow. The fourth sign is controlled information. Someone begins to know more about your life than you know about theirs. They ask questions. They rarely answer their own. This asymmetry feels like interest. Often it is reconnaissance. Not always conscious. But the mind gathers what it may need before it decides to use it. Here's the deeper mechanism beneath all four signs. Betrayal is rarely a single decision. It is a series of small internal negotiations a person makes with themselves, each one lowering the cost of the next. The first white lie makes the second easier. The first withheld truth makes secrecy feel normal. By the time you witness the betrayal, they have already rehearsed it internally, dozens of times, in smaller, deniable versions. This is why confrontation so often fails early. You catch the vague answer. They call you insecure. You notice the disengagement. They call you needy. This is not accidental. It is a defense mechanism functioning exactly as Schopenhauer described the will operating beneath consciousness, protecting itself first, honesty second. You begin to doubt what you saw clearly. This is the real damage of early betrayal, not the act itself. The erosion of your own perception before the act is even confirmed. Understand this now, calmly, without spiraling. You are not weak for noticing subtle shifts. Weakness is pretending you did not notice them because acknowledging them costs comfort. Strength is naming a pattern without needing it to be dramatic to be real. Most people wait for proof loud enough to justify their pain. The disciplined mind does not require permission to trust its own perception. The fifth sign is selective loyalty. They defend you when it costs them nothing. They go quiet when defending you might cost them something. This feels like neutrality. It is not. Neutrality in someone who claims closeness is already a form of exit. Schopenhauer never romanticized loyalty as noble sacrifice. He saw it plainly. Most loyalty lasts exactly as long as it remains convenient. Rare loyalty is the kind that survives inconvenience. That is what you are actually watching for, not affection. Cost. The sixth sign is premature self-justification. They begin explaining themselves before you have asked anything. Statements like, "I would never," or "you know how loyal I am," offered without provocation. Innocence rarely announces itself. Guilt often does, dressed as reassurance. It looks like loyalty. It is preemptive defense. Now place all six signs together, and a pattern emerges that is larger than any single behavior. Betrayal is not an event. It is an accumulation, a quiet transfer of investment from you to somewhere else, happening in fragments small enough that each one, alone, seems forgivable. This is the ego mechanism beneath it all. People rarely see themselves as betrayers while betraying. They reframe it. "I deserve happiness. This wasn't planned. You wouldn't understand." Schopenhauer's insight cuts through this comfortably. The will does not require honesty to justify itself. It only requires a story convenient enough to reduce guilt. Most betrayal is not calculated cruelty. It is self-interest wearing the mask of self-justification. Here is where you rise above the pattern instead of drowning in it. You do not need to catch someone to protect yourself. You do not need confirmation to adjust your trust. Waiting for undeniable proof while ignoring deniable signs is not patience. It is self-abandonment disguised as fairness. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity without dependency. You can love someone and still watch them accurately. You can stay present and still withdraw your naivety. This is not cynicism. It is maturity Schopenhauer would recognize instantly, seeing human nature as it is, not as you wish it to be, and refusing to suffer for the gap between the two. You were never meant to control who stays loyal. You were only ever meant to stop needing anyone's loyalty to know your own worth. That is not weakness learning to protect itself. That is strength that no longer requires permission to see clearly.